Hey, everybody. I am so excited today because this episode represents exactly what the mosaic is. 2 weeks ago, I had no idea that Donna Brown even existed. I was on a podcast last week, Nathan Seward's podcast, and we were talking about the fact that I just hated, really just like I'm entering a new place, and Nathan referred to it as a surrender experiment by Michael Singer, a book that was written. But I just am so spent with being sold to and selling that I'm really trying to open up this whole new way of doing life, which is becoming so intoxicating that the intoxication, like a flower that you walk by, the aroma of it becomes so sweet you can't do anything else but smell it. And so we were talking about that, and Donna made a comment on that, which in our conversation later, she said she almost never does on a podcast. And it piqued my interest, and I said, I'd love to talk with you more. We had a beautiful conversation about a week ago. I'm in San Diego. She's in Milan, Italy. And we had a conversation that really even piqued my interest more. It's that conversation that happens when we're open to it. The mosaic is all about one connects. We have the opportunity to connect to so many things all around us all the time if we would only take that opportunity. So I want to welcome in now Donna Brown. Hey, Donna, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm so happy to be here. Really. Thank you so much for having me.
It is my honor. And let me give you some of Donna's backstory. Okay, so you have it. But again, as you know me, much of the backstory doesn't mean much to me, but her story is certainly worth sharing a little bit. She's a business mentor, a creative, a motivational speaker, and a seeker. She loves to inspire and provoke with new ideas through developing a new definition and understanding of business as a tool to support your highest personal and spiritual growth. She's the founder of Walking Compassion, which we're going to get into hopefully in this podcast, a global movement for the development and practice of great compassion. She's a Canadian citizen and an Italian citizen. She's been living in Italy for 37 years. She has 2 grown kids, both who are in the arts. She's been a practicing Buddhist for 14 years. And she's done a lot of things. We're going to touch on some of those things, but really what I want to touch on is who you are right now. So let's go backstory a little bit before we jump in too much. Donna, when you were growing up, what was your favorite thing to do?
I actually, I actually didn't even talk about that at all. I was music. Music was my thing. I was a classical musician for a long time. That's what my formal studies were in. I was a performer. And so I was really just caught up part of that. And then if I would say on a more formal sort of studies and practice basis. And then the other thing, I was just, in love with the natural world. And so that, which sounds, I don't know, I think all kids are, to be honest. Like they're just fascinated with flowers and butterflies and looking at the grass and wondering what little world is going on in there and stuff like that. But I just know that I have really deep connection with nature.
I was more fascinated with trucks and,
right. Okay. That's true. That is true. I was going to say, but I think every child will appreciate a beautiful sunny day or 100%. Running on the beach or the feeling of running with barefoot on the grass. There's that very sort of tactile, sensorial thing. Yeah. Yes.
What form did your music take? Was it an instrument, a voice?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I did a bit of everything, really. I mean, I did the usual, playing the piano and playing the viola and singing. And then I ended up being a flute major at university and a performance major. So I suppose most of my concerts and solos were done on the flute. But then there came a time when I realized that I didn't have the vocation of a teacher. And I think that most musicians, a fair chunk of their income is through teaching.
Wow.
And I just thought, I just needed to do something different. I felt that wasn't my goal. Like performing would be great, But I also had been doing this in a very single-minded way for really over like 20 years. And it was like, but I'm sure there's something else, right? And then I just could feel this stretch of, yeah, exciting concerts. But I just thought, oh, wow, that's it? Like, that's it? I'm not going to do anything else ever? And I kind of threw, took like the little board game and kind of threw it in the air and came to Italy and decided to see what it would be like to work in another creative field, and came to work in fashion with no formal training, by the way,
Wow.
or work permit. Yeah.
So what gave you the courage? Was it just the thought that you had reached the peak for you of what you could imagine it to be, and then you just said, I want to reinvent? Because most people don't have the courage to take that big a leap, to be not acclaimed necessarily, but you were doing concerts, you were out there performing. Mm-hmm. And to leave that all behind and enter an industry that you didn't have any idea about, what gave you the courage to do that?
Well, to be honest, I had a lot of challenges with my family life. And I felt at the time we weren't 37 years ago, there were barely computers. You know what I'm saying? This was very basic. So when you move that far away and put an ocean between you and what you felt were your problems, even though I learned later that you bring them with you in your suitcase, that distance to me was really a question of what I felt as personal survival. And I don't feel that in music that I had reached what I could have done. There's a part of me that regrets giving that up. I think there was fear involved in that as well. But I think the stretching out into something new and being curious about other things is very much in my nature, but was also just really a survival thing of, if I'm going to thrive, I need to be somewhere else.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about the fear that you noticed of getting good enough on the flute and being sort of recognized a little bit, and the fear of what that would mean to go to the next level.
Or not being able to go to the next level, or there's fear of success and fear of failure. And without going into a lot of details, I guess my family life wasn't terribly nurturing. So I just felt that somehow I didn't deserve that, or I wouldn't be one of those people, or, I wouldn't be one of those people that would be successful at that, even though the sort of the scholarships and the prizes and all those things that I won didn't support that theory. But my internal story, what I told myself or what people around me told me, convinced me otherwise. So wow. I kind of gave into that. So yeah. And then there's a part of me that just said, there's more to you than this. So let's just go see what that is.
So was there more to you than this, or was it really the desire to get away from the voices outside of you that were telling you there isn't more to you than this?
Well, the voices were basically that I wasn't deserving of success, right? So that was a big thing. And I'm sure that there's still a little bit of that going on. That voice comes up usually at the most inconvenient moments, but that's what it's there, I guess. I don't know. But also I'm very curious and interested in other things. I've been, I just wrote a few sort of little facts about things I'd done, because we really just connected in this very beautiful heart space and kind of didn't really know the usual factoids about me. So I've always had this, I've been really blessed to do really, really interesting things that were so different, and very diverse, but with generally very little or no formal training in those fields. So yeah, just always very curious and very interested in learning and my rule, I think, who was it that was saying, say yes? Oh, Richard Branson, I think. If somebody asks you to do something you don't know how to do, say yes and kind of figure it out. And it would really just be this internal sort of feeling. I would just feel like, is that something I'm capable of doing, even if I don't know how to do it now? And if the answer was yes, I would just say yes and do it. So there's that adventurous part of me that likes that kind of a new challenge.
Let me connect some of the dots for people that are listening, because I think this conversation is it's supremely interesting. No, it's really, because some of those things that Donna did was she became a designer for major fashion brands. She went from fashion to home textiles and home furnishings. She went to from there to doing garden design and flower design, and she worked with the Dutch bulb growers marketing board to help them process. She started a TV miniseries in Italy. She did media projects. She wrote blogs for large publications in Italy. She's a cookbook author of 2 books, and she has an IP for a healthier lifestyle brand, a healthier style of gelato that is validated by Cancer Research Institute in Italy and taught at a major training institute. So, I mean,
Yeah.
those are as diverse as, and so really my question comes back to what the question was a moment ago, which is how does someone who is becoming really accepted in the music community, but the voices that she's heard in her head growing up all the time from people around her who have told her she's not worthy of doing that, how does that person then leave that and continue to reinvent themselves over and over again with such success? That's the most interesting thing to me.
Well, I think that first of all, so there's kind of a weird thing that's happened with all of these amazing, like I've had really beautiful opportunities, like really exciting and fun things. There's always, people talk a lot about imposter syndrome, and I don't know, I guess maybe, but I would feel something different. What I would feel when I was a musician, or when I was working as a designer, or when I was working as a lifestyle expert, people would say, what do you do? You know, the usual. So what do you do? And I would say these things, but I always would feel like I was kind of telling a lie, that it was only a partial truth. And it wasn't just because I hadn't always had a lot of formal training, but it was just because it felt like it wasn't this thing that I thought I was going to be doing forever and ever. So it seemed weird to be saying that that's who I was. You know, I'm a fashion designer, or I'm a this, I'm a that. I would always sort of talk about the job I was doing rather than saying I am a this or I am a that, because they always felt like partial truths. And they were so diverse that I also had difficulty in Italy. It's a pretty traditional culture. And this was also like 20, 30 years ago. So, you know, think back of what it was like maybe in North America at the time, very, very similar in many ways, is that people couldn't really, it's like, I thought you were doing this. Why are you doing that? And it's just like, so there was a certain amount of discomfort, as well as telling people that I was no longer, you know, say working for fashion brands, designing like knitwear. I was now, you know, designing, I was the fashion coordinator of a department store that only did home furnishings. And which they're cool things, but there's like, so how did you get there? It's like, I don't even know how I got here. Somebody said, are you interested? And I said, yes. I said yes a lot to things, but I found that, so it caused me to look underneath. So this is the thing I think is really important, is that I think we're all capable of this, basically. It's just that we're told that you kind of have to, and we believe that you have to kind of choose a thing and then stick with it to be valuable or worthy or whatever. Right? Mm-hmm. But I think that what it made me, by changing these things all the time, I had to make kind of sense of it for myself. And so what I really began to look at is, what did I do for all these companies and people? And basically it amounts to the same thing for each company or each person or each product or whatever. It would be to sort of really have a very good sixth sense of who they are and what their place is in the world. So some people would call that market positioning. Some people would call that a bunch of other, like you can go all sort of businessy about it, but it's on a deeper level. It's, so how do you naturally relate to the world? How do I relate to the world? So how do I see things? I'm a big vision person, but then I also have the ability to turn it into a project with like a beginning, a middle, and an end. I do very well with things that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. One of the things about being a musician for life, so to speak, was that I could see no end to it. And that just kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies. It's just like, so, and I've always, so that's my particular gift. And you can apply that to anything. like you and I were talking about a little heart project that you have. And it's like, and I'm like, oh, you could do this, you could do that. So I'm an ideas person, but then also have a very good sense of how to bring things to fruition.
Yes.
For whatever field.
So let me jump in, because I have this little guy in my head that speaks to me all the time. It doesn't mean that he's right. He just asks questions. So I'm intrigued by the girl who was an acclaimed musician. Let's just use acclaimed. It doesn't have to be you were like.
No, I was at the beginning of my career. I was at the beginning. Right?
But you were at the beginning of the career, but you were still playing solos. You were playing performances.
Yeah.
You were doing things. You weren't just sitting in your room playing a flute, right?
No.
And so you were out doing what you were doing. And these voices told you you're not good enough. You don't deserve that. It's not really what you should be. Do you think that as you changed from fashion to textiles to cooking to yogurt to ice cream to gelato, that same voice came in and said, you don't deserve to have this level of success and let's bump you to another place? Or do you think you somehow got over that?
No, I think it shows up. I mean, it still shows up for sure. It still shows up, and it shows up. Either it's relatively present. I would say more than I would like it to be. So a part of me would be, I think I would get to a certain point, and I would probably pull back from committing 100% or being afraid of success. I think most people are more afraid of success than they are of failure.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I would say, yeah.
And so, huge place for people listening to this, because I wish I could say you're the only one who thinks like that, but we're not. You're not, and we all know that, right? So along the way of rediscovering yourself, has it always been the same, or have you developed little keys? Because I know you work with people and you coach people and you inspire people and you lead people in one persona of who you are. Have you found keys that you could give? Like, just if there was one thing you would say to people right now who are saying, God, I know exactly what she's talking about. I have that same doggone voice, and I get to a certain place and then I just sabotage. What is it you would say?
Well,
and don't make it up. It has to be like
I would say no. So would I actually reframe it as not as sabotaging? We're protecting ourselves. We feel it's safer to be where we are or to not go to that place than to go there. So rather than sabotaging ourselves, I actually feel it's possibly misguided form of self-protection, right? That kicks in. It's safer to be where we are. It's safer to not do it. It's safer for me because, of course, our reptilian brain is wired to keep us safe and alive. It's not wired to keep us happy, fulfilled, satisfied, in expansion, moving towards enlightenment. It's meant to keep you alive, to not eat poison food, to not put your hand on the burner, to not go into situations that feel unsafe. So I actually reframe self-sabotage as protecting. What are you protecting yourself from? What makes you feel safer where you are? I feel it's a form of protection. And the self-sabotage, again, is another negative speak towards ourselves. So I'm criticizing I'm self-sabotage. I'm doing something bad to myself. What if I were actually, in a misguided fashion, doing something positive? What is the positive side of staying where I am? What's good about that? What's better about going on the other side? Do you know what I'm saying? So because I also still the self-sabotage. It's like, oh, wow, another bad thing I do. Like I'm overweight. I don't exercise enough. I'm not always patient. I'm not always, and now I'm self-sabotaging. You just add it to the list of things I'm not, right?
Yeah.
So I don't enjoy that word.
And I completely get that. And so, and one of the things that I talk about a lot in the work that I do and the conversations that I have is the fact that we live in silos. We live in silos of protection where we protect ourselves. We go to like-minded communities where we're protected by the thoughts of the community because we finally found people who think like us and we silo with those people. But our silos are getting to the point where they're getting bigger and stronger, and the gaps between silos are getting wider and deeper. So this like-minded community and this like-minded community now have bigger and wider spaces between them, and it's harder and harder to break into them. And part of what the whole thing for me of the mosaic is about is how do we melt those silos down? And how do we realize there's nothing in the world to protect ourselves from? And I'm purposely saying that because I want to segue now into something that's happened that really changed your life that I know about a little bit, which is a very contentious divorce that you've been involved in, proceeding.
Yeah.
And so how can I possibly say there's nothing to protect yourself from when you're involved in this process? So and I don't want you to say anything because I know it's still pending, and I don't want you to say anything that will impose on that, but can you talk about your divorce a little bit and how that sort of stripped away a lot of who you thought you were? And
Right.
a lot of...
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking now as you were talking about this, it's like that feeling of knowing that no matter what the cost, it was better to leave is the same thing that made me move to Italy, is the same thing. It's the same. It's not different.
Yeah.
It's really where it comes to a point where who I am, even though I may not know exactly who I am, kind of doesn't matter, to a point that sort of, I can't thrive here, and to live like this till I die ain't gonna cut it. And so therefore, no matter what the outcome, this has to stop. Like the way things are now this is it. Like, this is it. And that's what happened when I decided to move to Italy. It's what happened, that interior thing of no matter what the cost, and at the time you kind of, it's like, oh, no matter what the cost. And then, whoa, I got the cost. And that was a pretty long bill. Like, just to say it's a 7-year so far, this is year 7. So, and it took me more than 4 years to be able to leave the house. And we won't go into the details of what Italian law is, but just very simply, if you leave the house without an agreement, you forfeit any right to anything. So there was also that. Anyways, but I think that what happened was very interesting. So you say you're going, and I think anybody who's been through a divorce or the end of a long-term relationship, no matter what happens, it's the identifying yourself as the husband of, the wife of. It caused me I'm still the mother of my amazing kids, but it also meant not being there to cook them. They're grown up, and so before everybody gets all excited, they were of age, as right? I'm not
looking at you. Look too young for that to be the case. But
when they, oh my God, they're of age. They're on their, but to have to rethink what my relationship was with them, about not being able to live with them full time anymore, and then being kind of forced to make the decision to go out on their own. And even though at that age it would be perfectly normal, it was kind of like, whoa, so I'm not that mom anymore. I'm not the one who makes lunches. A part of me was very happy. It's like, whoa, I don't have to make lunches anymore.
Right.
And then there's the part that's like, oh my God, I don't have to make lunches anymore. Right. It's both. And so even something that you think is so, it's such a profound relationship, right? And that identifying with yourself as parent, right? Mother or father, even that had to be rethought in very deep ways, right? Of not being a point of reference for certain things, logistical things that I didn't realize how much I had attached myself to those. Leaving homes, leaving the city, leaving social status, leaving economic status, leaving my belongings, and walking away with a very different, walking away for whatever reason. Almost everything shut down. So all my business things shut down also, because I was it was a very long and hard process that took me to some very, very dark places for quite a while. I learned a lot about that too. One day it would be interesting to be able to talk to people about that as well. The insights that you gain through that. But I was in a very, very dark place. So I sort of isolated myself from people. So I lost my friendships. I lost the home. So I really went away with very few, like a handful of belongings, and me, myself, and I. And it was very disorienting, and in many ways it still is, right? So things that I would do easily, I can no longer do. Things I don't know. There's a part of me that's kind of like, oh, wow, I really miss that
Yeah.
stuff, you know,
And so
but it leaves a different space.
for people listening, it's the question that seems to bode just above all this, which is so powerful, is who are we when we're not the things we think we are? When we're not the
Exactly.
associations that we have, when we're not the wife of, or
Absolutely.
the husband of, or the job that we do,
Exactly.
or the mother of, or the friend of, or because I'm sure you lost friends in the separation as well, because people
Oh
started
yeah.
one or the other, without
Yeah.
the money,
Yeah.
without the house, without the, all those things. Who do we
Yeah.
become? And the beauty of Donna's somebody who's already, you can see from her history, has redefined herself many, many times. So for someone like her to be saying this is different than someone like most of us who I'm like you. I've redefined myself a million times. I was going to say like me, but I can't. But most people don't redefine themselves that often. And when something like
No.
this happens, that pulling the carpet out from underneath them and not having the ability to have that definition, for me,
Right.
it's like in the reason why I love the mosaic image so much is because in a jigsaw puzzle, every piece goes exactly in place. And there's something eloquent and exquisite about the fact that when every piece is in its place, you see the picture, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I love about the mosaic is the fact that it's not that way. In one moment, a piece can be taken out of everything that it is and put somewhere else.
Mhm.
And how we now create the new mosaic around us is exquisite for people if they can get past that initial like, what do I do now? Nothing's familiar. I don't know anything, right?
That phase can last for a very long time. You can be going I've discovered for a very long
Yeah,
period of time, much longer than you'd like to admit. But I
yeah,
think that what's so interesting is, anybody who's studied Buddhist philosophy at all will be familiar with the concept, or with this sort of the logical analysis of the fact that those are not intrinsic parts of me. I am a mother because I have a son and a daughter. Without them, so I'm dependent on somebody else to be defined as that. So it's not an intrinsic part of my nature. I wasn't a mother when I was 13. I wasn't a mother when I was 5. I wasn't a mother as a newborn. I wasn't a mother even at 26 or even at 30. I had my kids late. So we forget that, and we identify with these things
yeah,
so much, right? And I was, laughing. Oh, so now I'm the person that does this. Because I did something unusual. We'll be talking about that soon, I think, in this conversation, because I know we're kind
yes,
of heading there.
yes,
But it's like, oh, so now I'm the person who has a backpack. So for the first time in my life, I own a backpack, and now I'm the person who's as excited about a cool pair of hiking boots as I used to be for a pair of Louboutins that, with the red soles. And it's just like, very, very different. But the thing is that the other thing I was going to say, redefining ourselves, I would actually like to say that I think that we're just expressing ourselves. I don't think we're redefining ourselves, because if I have to redefine myself, it means I was that thing and now I'm no longer that thing. I'm always all those things.
yeah.
It's just, what am I focusing on now? What am I doing now? And that's where I think when you were talking about like the business persona, I just really feel that where we're headed is this is my personal feeling. And from where I feel things are going, that we're moving towards an understanding of our lives as just living our lives. And so there is no difference between being a mother, being a business person, having a business, being meditating, being spiritual. I feel that anything we do is meant to help us thrive as individuals. And so that there's no difference between me helping somebody else create a vision for their business or help them with that, as it is for me to bake a cake, or as it is for me to write a cookbook, or is it for me to design a garden for somebody, or is it for me to go on a spiritual retreat, or it's all the same. It's me just trying to have a deeper sense of self-awareness or like self-knowledge, the more I know myself and the more I honor myself and who I am and what I know how to do and what I can offer, others will benefit from that. So I don't know if I said that eloquently enough,
No,
but
you
it's
did it
really that
very
we
well.
are our purpose. You
Yeah.
know, I am my purpose. You are your purpose. That
Yeah.
is it. That
But
is it. And then it defines into other things.
it becomes very eloquent because it also comes, and it comes from when life takes away from you so many things, you realize you're no longer those things, even though those things are a part of you. Before the image of the mosaic, I use the image of a wheel. And at the
Mm-hmm.
wheel, the rim of the wheel is our interaction with the world around us. The spokes of the wheel are the things we do to make that interaction happen. But the core and the hub of the wheel is who we actually are. And most people get lost in the definition of themselves as a spoke. I'm a father, I'm a friend, I'm a writer, I'm a, business development guy, I'm a podcast guy now, and we define ourselves by the spokes, but the spokes are only the spokes. They're only one small way that we get to where we are. So I love the way you're talking about it, that it doesn't matter if you're helping develop a plan for somebody else or developing a plan for yourself, or baking a cake or sweeping the street or doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And part of the beauty of what I found in writing the book, The Mosaic, was that I wasn't somebody who hung out with ordinary people, quote unquote. I was a little bit of a snob. I liked to eat in only places that had good food. I liked to associate with people that had a higher vibration. And yet the book that wrote itself through me was about common ordinary people. A homeless guy, a street worker, a garbage man, a juice man. And what I saw in the beauty of that is that it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what they do. It matters every one of them. If we give them a chance to say something and listen to them, what they say, they have knowledge that will help us live our lives incredibly beautifully. So I love
Yes.
all that you're saying. So let's take another turn if we can. Okay. Because what surprised me, the show for me is a lot about surprises. And what surprised me when we started to talk was that suddenly, after talking for a little bit, you told me of your walk on the Camino de Santiago. And describe that. Tell us situations leading up. I was going to try and describe it. What I can say is hundreds of thousands of people of various backgrounds a year walk that walk, and probably every one of them walk it for a different reason.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. But we have the opportunity to sit with Donna now and just hear a little bit about that walk, what that was like, what motivated her to go on it. That's not an easy walk to do.
No. So again, it was there's a little bit of a pattern here. So I kind of took the little game board and went whoop from Canada and moved to Italy. Then it's just like, I'm not going to thrive and I can't do this till I die. Whoop, I'm going to throw like everything up in the air and leave this marriage. And then it was like, okay, there have been so many things that are not working. And I am a very creative problem solver, very creative. Like people call it, my son has named it doing a Donna Brown. Like you can come to me with anything and I can help you. It's like, boom, just what's possible and how to get from point A to point B just sort of unfolds in front of me and within me. And I was
let me interrupt for 1 minute.
Sorry. Yeah.
That's so obvious, because not even knowing Donna, I already laid out to her sort of a strategy and a plan for what I wanted. And I already wanted to have her get involved in helping me do it.
I know.
Without even knowing her for like half an hour, right?
Yeah. So, and I had been like really hitting my head against a brick wall for like, you know how those little cars, you have a little remote control and you're trying to get through the doorway and you just keep going and you can't get it to go where you want it. That I've been like that for years, not a few minutes. And it was just like, whoa, this is so not working. You know what I'm going to do? Nothing. A big fat nothing. I'm going to ignore all of these things and just put them aside. I'm not going to ignore them. I'm just going to put all these issues aside. And I am going to take a big, giant break that I should have. I didn't allow myself to take this break. I left when I finally was able to leave what was the family home. I was a mess, and I should had no business doing anything other than just taking like a year-long sabbatical, but I didn't. I thought I was always somebody who was very creative, very able and capable of doing a lot. So I thought I would throw myself into that and everything would be great. And it was horrible. It was awful and not very successful and not very productive. And I was just like, okay, you should have given yourself this break. And I kept saying, I should have given myself a year off. It's like, well, why am I not taking time off now? Why am I not doing this now? It's like, okay, I'm going to do this now. And I had a plan for myself, that I had this idea that I was going to challenge myself to hike Kilimanjaro. And they said, well, and I contacted these people and they said, well, what are you going to do to train? And I'd always wanted to do the Camino de Santiago, always. Well, it had been on my radar for a few years. It's not like this deep, long, deep-seated wish I'd had, but I'd been thinking about it. It's like, oh, that'd be interesting. And so I thought, oh, I could just walk the Camino. That would be great training. It's kind of like overkill, but anyway, so that kind of got me. It's really funny. We'll always do things we think we're doing them for a reason, and the reason reveals itself over time. So it kind of got me interested in the Camino. And then as I was looking at which way to go and where I would do it and what season I would do it in, because there are different routes, different ways, I chose the French route, and it's 775 kilometers. And then you add on a bunch at the end to do something else. So anyways, it's 880 kilometers by the time I ended up in Finisterre.
Let me jump in for a minute, because
that's 500 miles. That's about
right.
500 miles for for people who think in miles. It's 500 and something miles. I forget, 25, 75, can't remember. 500 and something odd miles. Right?
Let me highlight a couple things, because first of all, maybe without your knowing it or with your knowing it, when I was in seminary, the Rebbe taught me the strategy that you just said. And the strategy is, he would always say, I came to him because I was en route to India when I went to the seminary. And he said, why were you born Jewish? You weren't born Jewish to become a yogi. So why don't you stay here and learn about Judaism and see if that works? And I said, okay, that's a good point. I'll try. A day before I was going to be ordained, I left because I said to him, well, let me backtrack. He said, our problems, I came to him with a lot of problems. I said, I just can't get what's going on here. And I said, I want you to understand, our problems always exist at this level. They don't grow, they don't get smaller. What happens is we get stronger, and our problems, which seemed insurmountable before when we were here, now are just like a step and we can walk over them. Or we get weaker, and what seemed like a step before is now like a huge mountain that we don't know how we'll ever get over. So just do what you're doing, put your problems on the shelf and just do what you're doing and let that happen. So by you taking that break away from everything, what happened is you just allowed yourself to get stronger, to see something differently, first of all. The second thing I want to just highlight is it can't be just, oh, I'm going to walk 500 miles.
No.
Like it can't. Yeah. And so, I mean, there are a lot of people that would like to take that walk, but 500 miles, how long did it take you to take that walk?
So I had 3 days where I had a serious health issue, and 1 day I took off. So 4 days. And I think it took me 38, 39 days or something like that.
So you were walking about 15, 16 miles a day on an average.
Yeah.
Wow.
For sure. Whatever that is. It sounds good. It sounds good. But let's say in kilometers, it'd be about 25, something like that. Wow. Then one day I did 46 on the crazy day. But what was interesting about the walk is that, so for those who know me, I am very motivated about a lot of things. Physical exercise is generally not one of them.
Right.
And after these years of feeling very frozen and that was the other thing. I had been frozen. I was so depressed and so anxiety ridden, and just everything was going on. There were literally weeks I wouldn't leave the house at one point in this arc of 7 years, like weeks, not days, weeks. And I remember feeling like this is probably not true, but I know that it was actually true enough that I felt like I would literally just sit on a chair all day, like just sit on one chair and not move. So the frozen part of me, it's like, you can't do this.
And so hold on 1 minute. So when you sat on the chair all day, were you watching television? Were you using a
No,
computer?
no,
Were you working?
I was using a computer. I was being busy rather than working because my mind was just, if you have cortisol levels that are very, very high, it's very hard to focus. There was a lot of stress, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of things going on. So I would spend a lot of my day on the computer being mildly productive. I mean, I did do some things, like I translated some, I did things at the time, but they weren't huge things, right? I didn't take on anything big. And so from this sense of feeling frozen to feeling like I needed to move, like I had a moment of meditation where I felt like literally every particle of my body said, you need to walk, like you need to walk, not just a walk around the block thing. Those days are gone. You could have, if you'd kept moving, it's kind of like it all added up. It's like, all that stuff you didn't do for the last 7 years, you gotta walk it off. So it's like, okay, I hear you, I'm gonna walk. And then I think a lot of people do much better when they're doing something for others than when it's easier for us to do something for other people than it is to do things for ourselves. So immediately my mind went to that. So my sort of searching mind went to that space. But I was reading sort of the traditions and all the different things that people do on the Camino. And there's this very old tradition because the Camino's been around since, the year 800. So it's like 1100 years of people doing this. And there's a tradition of taking a stone at the beginning from your place, from your starting point. And people now we fly to a starting point, but people would walk from their house. They would literally leave their house and just say, bye, see you when I get back. And walk all the way. So walk from Milan all the way there. And then have to walk home too, right? It's like nobody was taking any flights home. You had to walk all the way back too. So I was reading this. So you would take a stone, and the stone was a symbol of what you were trying to release, or things, any negativity that you wanted to release along this journey. And at the Iron Cross, the Cruz de Hierro, in a place called Monteleon, is where people lay down their stone. And I thought it was very, very touching. And I thought, okay, I need that. It's like, that sounds cool. Like that felt like something. And then it was like, wow, I could do that for my kids. And then there's a Buddhist practice of offering the merit of what you do, the merit. So let's say spiritual brownie points of what you do for the benefit of other beings. And so I thought, wow, I could do that. I could do that. I could do this not just for myself, but I could just turn it into this whole thing that whatever. And then I thought, wow, what if people actually could choose that rather than me having let's say a very profound yet generic wish? What if I told people that if they have something they want to release, I will have one stone that is a collective stone, because I couldn't carry a stone for everybody, like an individual one. So that I'm going to have one stone, and whoever feels the need to release something and set positive intention to release that, to replace that, I'll carry it for them. And that's how Walking Compassion started. So these words, walking compassion as something in movement, as something in action, and not just this kind of possibly misunderstood generic feel-good thing, feeling. And that's how this whole thing started.
And so when you put that out, how did you put it out, and how many people responded?
So so again, the pulling back from success. So there are lots of those along this path, is that I could see and feel, because this is one of the gifts that I have, is to see and feel what something could become. And it overwhelmed me, the muchness of it, right? And how powerful this practice was for myself and for other people. And it would literally take my breath away. And I couldn't stand in that. So I communicated it not as much as I could have. And afterwards, I also received an outpouring of love that I wasn't able to receive as much. So I was a little bit shaky in being able to show up. I thought I would do this huge social, right? Everybody's used to the people who do all the social media posts and for a day and going live and doing this. I did almost none of that because I couldn't. First of all, I was exhausted. Then I didn't always have internet. but then there was a part of me that couldn't stay there. I couldn't stay there 100%. So I'm learning to stay there. So what happened was I put out a little page on social media saying, anybody who wants to do this, I will carry this stone for you. Whether you've been on the Camino before, whether you ever will be, doesn't matter. You don't have to be Christian. I'm Buddhist and I'm doing it. Just anything that you feel is holding you, weighing you down, and is something that is no longer serving you in your life, I will carry it. And we will carry it together, and we will support each other as a group in your intention to release this. And so I had about 1,500 people sign up for this, wow, which was a lot. For me, it was a lot for the first time. I received, like, the message that I received when I first saw this thing was 100,000 people, which is why I freaked out. So I realized that the 100,000 is over time, and I'm a little bit relieved by that, because I had no idea of how to collect 100,000 people. And so that's how it started. And again, I think the other thing is allowing ourselves to not show up perfectly, because you don't, let's say somebody who wants to run a marathon doesn't decide, oh, I'm going to run a marathon and get up and run it. They train, they don't do well, they do better, they give up, they start again, all that stuff. So even though you may have this big vision for yourself, I don't even know that we're self-sabotaging. Maybe we're growing into being able to be that thing, because the visions we have sometimes are huge, right? They're really, really big. And to be able to stand there immovable, right? And be that, right? Be that isn't a small thing. And so we do protect ourselves, and we do allow ourselves to grow into being these things that we see. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It totally makes sense. We may have talked about this, I'm not sure, but there's a beautiful practice that Thich Nhat Hanh does. He's a Vietnamese monk. Yes. And he calls it compassionate listening. And what he does is he says, I want to hold this space for you. I don't want to hold it inside myself, because it would be too painful for me to do that. And I'm not as strong enough to do that. But I want to just hold this space outside of myself right here. And I want you to be able to pour all of your pain, all of your suffering, anything that hurts you or ails you, just pour it all into this space. Talk to me about it. Tell me what troubles you. And even if you say to me, Thich Nhat Hanh, you're the one who's made me feel this way. I'm not going to rationalize it. I'm not going to defend myself. I'm not going to tell you anything. I'm just going to say, really, please tell me more. And allow you to pour more and more and more of your pain and suffering into this spot, so that we can be there for each other, to see what it feels like to walk free of that pain. You can get it anytime you want. It's in this place. You can come into this holding tank anytime you want and take it back. Right? And to me, when I heard you say that with the rock, then that's what the mosaic to me is all about too, is it's about this ability to be there for each other and hold the space collectively that we can't hold individually, because we're not strong enough to do it. But when I heard you talk about the stone, it felt like the same sort of practice. So when you felt 150, when you felt 1,500 people respond to your email or to whatever it was that you put out there, what did it do? Was that a physical sensation you felt? Did you feel what was that sensation, and how did you carry that with you along the Camino?
Well, we're very creative at protecting ourselves, right? At finding ways of dealing with things. So even beautiful things, like even something as moving as that, I couldn't talk about it. I mean, now if I start to really go into the feeling of what it felt like, it's like, oh, the tears come up. So it's like, okay, hold it together here. But so the feeling was overwhelming. I just felt so honored that people would entrust me with something like that, even though it was the rock, and even it had nothing to do with me. I'm just like a channel, a conduit for an opportunity that's available to us every millisecond of our lives. Yeah. Only sometimes we just need a little somebody on the outside, or just something to happen for us to take that moment for ourselves and to give ourselves permission to do something like that. And that's really what that was meant. It was very humbling. Like it was very moving and very humbling. So at the beginning of my journey, it was, as I said, I was very out of shape, and I bought my very first backpack ever. Like and then set out like a crazy person. And so of course I was exhausted at the end of the day. So I had physically the time to write something, but my brain, I would like open up my phone or whatever and think I'm going to write something, and my brain would just be like blank. I had nothing left. I had all these thoughts during the day. I probably should have recorded them, or I don't know, but I just couldn't. I had nothing else left to give. So I just let myself be in that space, allowed myself to show up imperfectly. And that was a big lesson as well, that they were happy anyways. Like at the beginning, people were writing me, and then when they realized that I didn't have email on my thing, so that they would write me things, but I wouldn't be able to answer them. They stopped mostly. So I felt badly about that, but there was this outpouring of just this desire to communicate and support. And then I had a huge health challenge that I ended up having to go to the hospital. They were debating whether to keep me there, and they said, this is really, really serious. It can be life-threatening. It's called cellulitis in English, and it's very painful, and it's a bacterial infection. But it just, when I thought, oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to do it for these people. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna say? And so I had to share with them. I had said I had a little bit of pain. Like I didn't really say too much. And then all of a sudden I had to say, listen, I've been in the hospital, and this is kind of what they said. I'm not really sure what's going to happen now. And I thought, oh no, I'm going to let them down. And now what am I going to do? Now what am I going to do if I can't do what I said I would do? And one beautiful person, first of all, everybody said, don't worry about us. Look after yourself. And one person wrote, you said you would take it for us. You didn't say when.
Beautiful.
I was like, whoa. So do it. So if it happens now, it happens now. If it happens next year, sometime in the future, it will happen when it's ready to happen. And it just taught me, the Camino, for anybody who is thinking of doing it, it's really like a centrifuge of life lessons. It's just really like everything is just a parable of your life, right? Of the things that you're carrying. What are you carrying that you don't need to carry? And I mean, it's just like it goes on and on and on. But what I realized that for them, I really put it on to other people. Like I immediately sort of avoided thinking about myself too much, and found this great heart opening, transcendental, really sort of feeling and vision of helping others without including myself.
Yeah.
That's what I think people do. I didn't include myself.
It's one of the big things that I noticed in the mosaic is that for most of us who are givers, we give, but we forget to give to ourselves. And it's in the joy of taking care of everybody else that we think we'll find our joy. But really what happens is we leave ourselves outside of the circle of what we're being given to, and we get some joy from looking into the circle and seeing all the people we helped. But if the channel is blessed by what flows through it, why not walk into the circle and give to yourself? One of the practices of the mosaic is I have a little bracelet on my website that I sell. I give it away. It doesn't matter. It's just a 21 consecutive day challenge to be kind to yourself. And
exactly.
And it's so hard to do.
I know. And so what I realized for them was that if I didn't take really good care of myself, I couldn't do it. It's very basic. I mean, it sounds, it's not earth shattering, but it was earth shattering to me. It's like, wow, if I don't get really almost selfish about looking after myself and what is best for me to be able to do the Camino, to be able to do and to do what I want to do. If I don't look after myself on a deep level, this ain't going to happen. And I'm not going to be able to look after other people. And this was again, it was really the metaphor of also carrying these things for people is really to have compassion for yourself. So I thought I had to have compassion for myself. So what happened was I had to give up carrying my backpack, at least at the beginning. Like this, I'd carried it for about 2 weeks. I had this huge problem. And from this one city on, I started using this service where you can just send it ahead where you think you're going to stop. And if you want to go further, you pick it up and keep carrying it. And there was all this kind of judgment on of what a real pilgrim does. A pilgrim carries their backpack. And I saw other people thinking it, and I thought it, and I was judging myself and all this nonsense. And in the end, I thought, but this feels amazing. So I wasn't allowing myself to focus on what I was really there for. And so I had this little tiny sort of nylon thingy backpack that wasn't even meant to be a real backpack kind of thing. It was just sort of to throw your wallet in to walk around town. And I carried my stones. I carried what was necessary. So it's like, wow, you have to really focus on only what is necessary to this journey. The stones for everybody, those I always carried. Water is life. Like my phone and money, and sort of and that was it. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. I have been told, like I was physically forced, like I wasn't listening. It's like, okay,
yeah,
we will give you the gift of having a health challenge. So you're going to have to stop carrying a stupid backpack. Like, don't worry about your toothpaste. Don't worry about your pajamas. Don't worry about your towel, Stop carrying stuff that isn't necessary and focus on the purpose of this journey. And once I started doing that, it became walking towards freedom, walking towards lightness, walking towards joy, walking towards a state of grace, which is available to us always.
So what I love in that story is, as I'm just listening to you in a small microcosm, tell your story back about what you felt about life and what other people told you was possible for you in your life. It even appeared on the Camino where you felt like, here, I had to give my backpack in order to stay healthy. But people were saying, no, you're not a real pilgrim. And so the beautiful victory for you of
absolutely,
looking at what other people thought about you and still doing what you knew you had to do for yourself is a huge victory. So what I want to ask you, because we're sort of winding into the last, 9 minutes or something. If you could boil down all the lessons you learned into one lesson, what would that one lesson be? Especially on the Camino, I guess, but you could talk about it in all your life, because the Camino is just the walk of your life in one way, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. To me, there's this great quote by Tagore, and it's, I was asleep, I slept and I saw that I was asleep and I saw that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. And, I took action and behold, service was joy. So this whole thing of understanding that I don't know. I just really, I'm so happy when people are talking about millennials and they're so selfish. It's like, yes, go for it. Look after yourself. Just discover who you are and just try to stay as connected as much as possible as what feels good right now. What will help me right now? What is of service to me right now? And whatever everybody else says, shut it out. Like I had to get rid of my inner voice saying, that was really just mirroring what other people saying. It's like, oh, well, and it's like, you know what? This is amazing. I'm not going to listen to it. This is amazing. This is exactly what I need. And do the Camino, like take the path that you need to take for yourself. And the world will be served by that. We're always, externalizing things, but the more you serve yourself, the more you'll serve the world.
Yeah, I almost want to reframe it. And you tell me if this makes sense to you, that it's not that we mirror back what the world is saying to us as much as the world mirrors back what we are saying to it. So in other words, when we come with this thought of I'm not doing the right thing or I'm not able to do it the way I should do it, the world then responds that way. So that really it's the world is a mirror to us that shows back to us what we believe about ourselves. And the
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's a bit of both, really, because there's cultural conditioning, right? That's definitely didn't come from us. Cultural conditioning about, what's right, what's wrong, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. There are all these social rules that you have without even realizing that you have them, right? So some of those we are mirroring back what was mirrored to me very strongly from them. And yes, I agree that on a deeper level, the experiences that we have, or people are mirroring to us what is, what's within us. But there is also, we can allow ourselves to be distracted by the voices around us.
100%. So I guess the question really what I was asking was, once you became okay with the fact that you were a real pilgrim and that you could walk the Camino without having to carry your pack, because you were actually going to do this for the people that you were carrying with you, which was much more than whether you were carrying a backpack or not. Did the voices around you stop saying, when you became at peace with that, did the voices still say to you, you're not a real pilgrim, you should have been carrying your backpack, or did that?
No, I just listen. Oh, the people around me, like you mean the external people?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, people always look at you. There's all like, I think that that there's a plethora of judgmental people around. So yeah, you can see the look or this or that, but I just learned to not even, like, it didn't touch me anymore. Once I knew that I was there for that, and that is why I was there. And it doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. If you know that what you're doing on the inside is what you need to do, then the outside doesn't matter. Like, that was the big thing for me. And that was a big, it was a big win for me. Like, that was a big thing, like, to really allow myself to let go of what I didn't need. Because you think, you have to do this, you should do that. These are all weights that we carry around between what we really want to be doing and what we feel we should be doing. And that's why we feel heavy and things don't feel great, and we procrastinate, or there are all these things that happen. That it's just one of the reasons. And that just allowed me to go, wow. So the more I am true to myself, and the real reason I'm on this journey for myself is so that I can develop that compassion for others, is so that I can offer this service to others, so that I can free myself of useless stuff that I've been carrying around, which is anger and resentment and all that stuff, and hurt and sadness and all those things. That's why I'm there. Everything else doesn't matter. Everything else is extra, and therefore should be shed. There is no reason to carry it or to spend time and energy worrying about that stuff.
And so what I hear you saying is the backpack that you gave over to be delivered to your next city still exists in life, because it's all these things that we want to give up. But to the extent that we can give that up, it's like the Indians have a great tradition. They take off their shoes before they come into a home. And the thought is that the evil entities sit in the shoes, and you walk into the home without the evil entities. And they're there for you to pick up when you put your shoes back on. But when you come into the house is sacred and untouched.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that philosophy of, like, I can leave those things behind and pick them up at the next town if I want them. They'll still be there if I want, or I can just leave them. I can just walk and say, I'm going to take some things out of my backpack here in this town and leave it here.
The other thing is that it's 3 or 4 euros, which is very little. So think of people who have sore knees, and people who are having problems with their feet, and people who are having all this pain because they will not do that thing that they could resolve for literally the price of a coffee and something, right? Yeah. Like a cappuccino or something like that. Café con leche, or not very much more than that. Yeah. So why won't we allow ourselves something that feels better?
Totally. Love it. Let me ask you, I love that point. Let me ask you the question I ask everybody as our last question, and there's a follow-up to it, okay? Mm-hmm. When you look at the world around us today, with all of its advances, all of its suffering, all of its pain, all the disagreement, all the love, all the things, opportunity. Is this world that we live in today the world that you always dreamed of handing over to your children and your children's children?
No, I don't think anybody ever feels like that. You see quotes from Marcus Aurelius saying the same thing, that, so I think this is endemic. Everything that we feel is, let's put it this way. The way things are right now, I think it's really kind of like a social big bang, because I feel that a lot of very clean and beautiful things are coming out of this. It's just that right now we're right in the middle of the mess. So I won't say no, it's what we have now, were it to stay exactly the same, I would say no. I do see seeds of beautiful things. Totally. And it depends if enough people want to carry those forward. But I feel that there's amazing there are some amazing things that are taking place and that are taking root.
100%. So if there were one thing that you could say to people, just one thing, boil it all down to one simple thing of what you could say that would help the world move more in a direction that we would be proud to give to our children and our children's children, what would that one thing be?
To love yourself.
Bam. Bam. Love that.
I think everything comes from that. If you can't love yourself, so as you were saying before, you're trying to help people and do things for other people. But if you're ignoring yourself, if you're not tending to yourself, the other things you need to be able to tap into that wellspring of the divine, people call it the divine spark or the Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it. Like, we're all God's children, whatever you want to call it, that essence, that is the wellspring of joy and happiness. It's not the car, it's not the job, it's not even helping other people. It comes from that. It's just a natural outcome. And the way of behaving, the way of speaking, your way of speaking changes, your way of treating other people changes. Your way of, you wouldn't dream of throwing something on the ground and leaving it there. Very simple thing. It changes everything. It changes everything.
Donna, how do people get in touch with you if they want to take this walk with you, or if they want to know more about how to do your practice? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So either walkingcompassion.com,
okay,
or donnabrown.com. And what's exciting is that I will be continuing this series of pilgrimages. I'm going to Tibet on pilgrimage in August, but I realize that this is something that's very it really brings people together. It really attracts people, and then the conversations start, and how everybody else is transformed through these journeys that look like a personal journey, but they're really, we're on it all together. I'm curious also, right? Because I don't have it all figured out. I'm very curious and excited to see what this global compassionate community is going to do together.
I love that. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for talking to a very imperfect stranger and spending this much time with me. It is my honor to have you on here. What I want to do is just summarize in a couple of minutes sort of what happened for me on this show. I took an opportunity and a risk. I met somebody that I didn't know before through a connection that I had that opened up another connection. And what I find is the wonderment of the world is when we allow ourselves to make connections, when opportunities happen and we walk towards them rather than away from them. Even if we protect ourselves, even if we're scared, even if we just want to hide and hold back and not give ourselves fully to it, something magical happens, something opens up for us. And what I want to invite all of us to do, whether we actually go with Donna on her next journey or not, which I would really encourage you to do. Start training now for it if you can. But what I'd really like to invite all of us to do is take that walk of compassion in every day.
Absolutely.
You can take that walk from your car to the elevator, to your office, to your coffee machine, to the place where you have lunch, to the place where you go out to dinner, to the place where you greet your wife or your husband. You can take that walk and leave behind you all of the things that no longer serve you. And along your way, find those places that are heavy, find those places that are burdensome, find those places that you don't need, and just set them down on the table. You can always come back and get it. But if you find that you can live your life without it, take them and put them in the trash can. And one of the beautiful characters of my mosaic, the trash man, he comes every week to your house. He'll help you take the trash out if you need to. Just put what burdens you into that trash and let it be taken away so you can walk free of your backpack. You can walk free of your burden. You can walk free of the things that hold you bound. And you can walk on your own Camino. So it's with my honor and pleasure that I thank you again, Donna, for being with us. Please contact her and we'll put your links down below. And I look forward to our next episode when we'll go into another surprise that we'll find soon.
I just want to say, I don't know if I'm allowed, but I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for just wanting to connect and just wanting to talk and just wanting to discover each other and discover there's so many beautiful, wonderful, amazing people capable of so many beautiful things. And I found it very inspiring to speak to you, and the Mosaic is a beautiful project, and listening to your vision for the world and for the future is so inspiring. And it's an honor and a blessing to be here, but it's an honor and a blessing to know you and to have somebody around who's modeling that kind of behavior. And as I said, you're talking about training up. The compassionate story is, the walking compassion is a virtual journey for most of us, but it's real in that you do, it's in everything that you do. Every moment is sacred, every moment is special, every moment is full of wonder and grace and beauty if we allow them to be.
Absolutely. Thank you again. Big love to you. And Mir, back to you. Everything you said to me. Ciao.
Love. Thank you so much.
See you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.